Yes.
So last time I spoke about the Punjab problem and how we tried to sort out terrorism. Now, this is a very interesting problem. Uh, Countries in Europe and other places with land borders don't have this problem because they don't have fundamental terrorism going. In fact, if you ask me, they don't even understand that particular game. Here, because I think in Pakistan, they themselves are in a very poor state, as you can read in the papers, both in their administration as well as in their economy. Millions of people and a lot of money coming from Saudi Arabia and from other Muslim states, Turkey, to run madrasas. And madrasas, what do they train the young boys, not girls, boys? They go, the mothers part with the young boy because they can't feed these children. The mothers send them to the madrasa because they get one square meal, a very good meal per day. But they're taught only the Quran. They mug it off by heart. They don't understand a word of the Arabic. And they go up and down like that, mugging it off by heart. And the mullah explained to them that you have to give your life for Islam. Islam is always in danger. Islam is a very great religion, I must tell you. But if you consider that the religion is in danger, surely there's something wrong with that perception of it. Therefore, everybody is an enemy. He must be killed because he's a kafir, or he must be converted. Matthew, Christianity has a similar situation of converting others by fair means or foul to their religion because they feel they are themselves are in danger if you don't convert. I don't know. It'll take time for the wisdom of human beings to understand that religion must make you happy and self-satisfied and not consider yourself in danger. And I think Vedanta that most of us follow in this country is a good example. There are others. Anyway, we see where that goes. But in Pakistan's case, there is a generic hate developed from childhood against India, which is the great big bad monster which has to be destroyed. So it's the Goliath, and young David has to come and get him. This brought up from childhood, from kindergarten, this hate campaign. Started by the military rulers right from 1958. Ayub Khan was the first. And now the generations carry on. And I tell you, we had some deals with Pakistan military to military, and then eventually we did come to know from Benazir Bhutto, who was then when I was the chief, she was the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And when we approached her privately to say that, look, what about these talks? Where do we go from here? Especially in regard to Siachen Glacier and other places, which I'll describe as we go along. She said, I don't think Pakistan is mature enough at present to make solid peace with India. It'll take time. So we wait and see where that goes. But meanwhile, they have generated terrorism. Many young men have nothing else to do, get a lot of money to give their lives for Islam, and they go and think it's their duty to penetrate our borders and create mayhem everywhere, especially in Kashmir. They feel that since Kashmir Valley itself has a majority of Muslims, it was not always so in history. In history, for instance, Kashmir has always been ruled from ancient times by Hindus and Buddhists. For instance, one of the famous monarchs of Kashmir was Lalitaditya. He conquered whole of North India. The time of the Mahabharata, he joined the Kauravas in that Mahabharata. But whatever, it shows that history has its way of functioning. And Islam only came in there after the Mughals came to India. And Jahangir managed to conquer Kashmir and Kangra and all these places and convert by force the majority of people to Islam, mostly the poor, the poverty-stricken people. So they've got their hassles. And It's a violent thinking. And when, as a nation like Pakistan, you develop support terrorism as a strategic technique of lowering the strength of your opponent, which is India, that terrorism has a method of hitting you also. You create the terrorism in the country, and the terrorism also has its pound of flesh from those within the country, as you can see in the news, what's happening. Then in the Taliban case, the Taliban was raised from the refugees of Afghanistan who ran away to Pakistan when the Russians came into 1958 or thereabout. And Russians stayed there for maybe 10 years till the assistance of America and terrorists from Pakistan who were supplied by America with money, with gold, with weapons, with ammunition to go sort out Afghanistan. But that created the Taliban. And now the Americans themselves had to run from there, as you saw, because you create a monster and then you can't control the monster. Then Pakistan assisted the Taliban and always thought that the Taliban, which is really Taliban means the student people who are armed and trained as terrorists in the northwest frontier of Pakistan, to try and prevent the ingress of tribal warlords into the Pakistan territory. It used to be in the days of the British, where the Indian army was mostly concentrated because of the depredations of tribal warlords across the border to pick up pretty women and pick up gold from the temples and catch cattle and things like that and take them away from bountiful India. Because if you look at Afghanistan, it's dry, barren hills where not a blade of grass grows except where a little water comes in some streams like the Kabul River. So, all right, this Pakistani supported the Taliban, and when I was the army chief of Pakistan, newly appointed was Aslam Beg, and I sent a letter to him of congratulations, and I said, try and let the people govern the country rather than the army govern the country. He said, yes, we'll try our bit. But nevertheless, they also supported the insurrection in Afghanistan by the Taliban against the Russians first and then against the Americans. Now that Taliban has taken over Afghanistan, Pakistan is finding depredations still coming across the border, especially from the TTPK, that is the Islamic group from Syria. Pakistan Taliban Pakistan. They are the ones who come across the border and blow up school children in schools and things like that in Peshawar and northwest frontier. So they are hoist with their own petard, as they say, wisdom will dawn perhaps in due course of time, because history teaches slowly, but it teaches nonetheless, otherwise you have a problem in the country. I must say in passing, Nivedita, that many people asked me when I became chief, said, why can't we sort of, attack Pakistan and finish them off or something? I said, you can't do that. The people are there. They elected to have a separate country in 1947. They became a separate country. And we must respect that. The Red Cliff line, which was drawn as a border between India and Pakistan during partition, has to be, it's an internationally recognized border, and it has to be respected. Number two is that they have to find their own future and their own well-being. And we would like to help them. If you ask me, we have to help them as far as we can to at least feed their populations and help them. But China is putting them in a lot of debt, building a lot of massive constructions of roads and canals and hydroelectric and railways and so on. But what about feeding the population, and what about giving them jobs? That's the problem that all of us face, even in India. Pakistan is very jealous that India has managed to survive so well so far, despite aggression from some sort of a threatening aggression from China in the north and Pakistan in the west. And they haven't still realized that Islam is not a separate nation. The partition took place on the premise that Muslims are a separate nation, cannot be ruled by Hindus. But the very fact that Eastern Pakistan separated, with some assistance from us, no doubt, but they themselves wanted to become separate because they were treated so badly as Bengali. They wanted their own land. And now Bangladesh is there. It's a separate Muslims there. It does not mean that they want to be under the rulership of Pakistan, not at all. So Islam is not a single nation. You have Indonesia, which is Islamic, but a peaceful one. It's very well conducted, very well. To look at their names, they're all Sanskritized names. They are convertees from Hinduism. That's fine. So we don't want complete collapse in Pakistan. Otherwise, millions of refugees will be crossing our borders and coming to the green fields of India. We will not be able to manage that. So we have to be careful that collapse should be avoided. That's my view. Anyway, I had told you about the problems in Punjab supported by terrorism from across the border. Young Sikhs who don't get jobs, who are, all over the world, everyone wants to intervene and interfere in any country which is progressing too well. It's a threat to even Western nations to find India becoming too strong. So whether it's Canada, the West, I can name a number of countries, but nonetheless, secret funds and monies are coming into Pakistan and other places, even from the United States, from Britain, from Western Europe, etc., to try and balance the progress of India. That is being used for terrorism mostly. America is giving them weapons, giving them aircraft, tanks. Though we kept on complaining that these are being used against us, not against Afghan terrorists. But nonetheless, the Americans say, yes, we agree with you, but these 65 war, 71 war, the Kargil war was all with American equipment. Anyway, wisdom may dawn, but we must realize that every country in the world has its own strategic strength and will act accordingly. It's for us to be strong enough to withstand the efforts at destabilization of this country, which go on till today. You can see that in the press, whether it's against our economy or whether it's against certain industrial houses like Adnani or whoever. Nobody can accept that you are becoming too powerful, becoming too rich. What will you be like when you become a powerful state? Are you threatening the power and wealth of those who rule the world today? For instance, we are not very happy with the United Nations since we do not get enough representation in the 5 nations who happened to win World War II. World War II was so many years ago. Doesn't mean that you have to rule the world with the Security Council and the Master 5 who have the veto to do as you please, not accept. So we see where that goes. But what I say is that whether it's China is a member of the Security Council and has the power of veto, or whether it's America or anyone, they cannot rule the roost forever. It's for us to become powerful enough, to be respected enough, that we must be consulted no matter what the decisions about the world are. And as you can see, the government today, having managed to last for 2 terms so far, hopefully for the third, we are becoming reasonably powerful, and our advice and our support is sought by all nations in the world. So we'll see how the power relations, even in the United Nations, must eventually change to bring in the views of those who represent large sectors of the world population. I mean, we are 1/5 of the world population. So is China. Brazil is another country. So therefore, we see where that goes, but the world will have to get that wisdom and not think that just because they won World War II that they must rule forever. Now, we have to deal with Pakistan, and we are dealing with it. Even today, you find this Khalistan movement and other movements in our border state of Punjab. It's exactly what I used to face when I was the chief. For that matter, when I became a major general, I told you earlier, we had to deal with Punjabi terrorists, Sikh terrorism, and we will deal with it. It's only a small percentage, I must stress, of Sikhs who are causing this problem. It's not the rest of them. But the majority keeps quiet, as all of us do. It's the minority who makes a big noise, and it's like the tail wagging the dog. We have to understand that. You have to deal with the terrorists, but not think of the whole community as being antagonistic. They're not. They're very much part of us. So I dealt with that, and I had explained to you how we infiltrated into Punjab and sorted out things with the assistance of Mr. KPS Gill, who was the DG police in Punjab. I'll talk now. Mark you, I have to tell a lot of things to you. There was a huge problem in Kashmir. But before I come to that, that was all in 1989. 1989 was a very interesting year. It so happened, according to the luck of draw, that I was the army chief there. And I must tell you that the politics of the day did not know how to deal with certain problems, and therefore expected me in the army to perform to the best of our ability without giving us any directions, by the way. With as good Indians, I think we managed to. I'll explain that a little later about the Kashmir problem when we had a Taliban problem in 1989. Before I go there, I want to talk about some visits by foreign chiefs to India and Indian chiefs to foreign countries. Now, this is laid down as per the normal drill that a military chief is permitted to visit. These are ceremonial visits. They're called ceremonial visits. They're there to make friends and to make goodwill gestures on behalf of the country. And the military chief is authorized to select which countries he can visit 3 times in a year. Similarly, he's permitted to invite 3 military chiefs from 3 separate countries in the year. But the decision that the military chief makes has to be sent up to the foreign ministry, and the foreign ministry mulls over it, and the foreign minister mulls over it. They probably consult the prime minister also. Then they may agree, or they may not agree. In my case, when they asked me where you want to visit, I said that I want to visit Australia for the first. I only took over in June, and we had the Maldives operation. I got very busy with that, but I was free by towards the end of November, and I thought I'd visit Australia. Why did I think of Australia? I thought of Australia because it's a continent separate from everywhere else, and they're not a very large population. Their army is small but very effective, and their military, we've got an air force and a navy, which are very small, but they are effective. As I explained in World War II, the ANZAC, the Australian New Zealand Division, did good service for the British Crown. And since it's a separate continent, it is a little away from all the problems of the rest of the world. And it's in the southern hemisphere. There's a large amount of sea between them and massive powers like China or Russia or America or anyone else. And I thought it's a good thing to go and see how they think. I visited Australia for about a week, and it was a very good visit. We visited Canberra. I spoke to the army chief, and we discussed everything. He was very disappointed that ladies had been permitted to join the military because of the lack of men, and the defense minister became a woman. And so she said that if you can't meet the quantum of troops required for the Australian army, why don't you recruit women? They're willing. So he said we allowed them to join the ranks first, separate to what's happening in India. And they succeeded very well in the ranks. Then he got information that after 2 years of Australian women in the ranks, then the government asked him to allow them to become officers. So they joined the Australian Military Academy. And when I was talking to him across this table, he got a telephone call to say that from the Australian Military Academy, after a 2 years course, the number 1 Number 2 and number 3 were all women in passing out order. One got the gold medal, the other got the Sword of Honor, the third got the silver medal. And he was wringing his hands, saying, we don't want them to join the infantry or the cavalry, which is, right up in action in the front. But when you become number 1, 2, and 3, you have your choice. We are hoping against hope that they don't insist on joining the infantry or the cavalry or the gunners. Anyway, he asked me at that time, what about the Indian Army? How are you preventing the government from bringing women in? I've told you about this before, I think. But I said, what happened was that our Navy chief and Air Force chief decided that they'd like to get the ladies into the respective services. So they put up a case to Ministry of Defense. And Defense Ministry sent the thing back to say that we request you to get consensus with the military army also, so that single orders can be passed by the government. So at the Chief of Staff Committee meeting, they asked me, that, look, what about getting women into the Indian Army? So I said, I'll ask you a few questions. So I asked them, can a woman who joined the Air Force fly fighter aircraft? And the Air Chief said nothing to it. They'll have to be on ground, and they'll have to look after education, and they'll have to look after administration, engineering, communications, medical, things like that. And asked the Navy Chief, can they go on board ship? Oh, he says, never. They're all men on board ship, and very tight quarters, and you all share one bathroom on board a fighting vessel. Can't have women there, they'll create a lot of problems. So I said, that means a woman can't become the Chief of Air Staff or maybe the Chief of the Naval Staff. They said, no, nothing. In other words, they wanted women to come on a temporary service for about 5 years to fill up junior ranks and then go away. All that, as you can see now, ladies having gone to the Supreme Court have changed. So I told them, I said, that's not good enough. If you bring women into the services, then they must be equal in every respect. It's up to them. They wish to join the frontline forces or they don't. But should they wish to, they have to take the good and the bad, whatever they wish to do. And I said, in India's case, since I'm recruiting from the villages, not very well educated people, in my time, the education standard for a soldier was the 8th standard of education. Today it is 10+2. But in my time, in 1988, when I became the chief, the standard for a soldier coming to the Indian Army, especially in the infantry and other places, was 8th standard. For armored corps and others, it was 10th standard. So because education was poor in those. And I said, if I ask women to come in, they are studious and they work very hard and they're very industrious. They'll get in my selection board and their husbands will fail. And with the result, that will be a breakup of marriages. And I'm not one to break up the marriages in Indian villages. They'll be held to it. Because the man has so much ego that he finds his woman has got into the military when he's failed. They're going to be held to bear. I said, we have to become more mature before we understand this problem in the village. So hence, I refuse. But 2 years and some months down the line, when my successor, General Rodrigues, took over, he allowed women to join the Indian Army, but again, only in support services, not in active service. All that is changing now. But I'm talking of 1988 and 1990. And now in 2023, the ball game is completely changed. Except that we need more women, perhaps, in our soldiery. You can't only be officers, you have to be men also. You have to be troops. And I don't know whether they should be mixed battalions or whether they should be separate Mahila battalions like they have in the police. But whatever it is, if you want women in the military services, they must serve all aspects of it, the troops as well as the officers. Now we'll see where that. Anyway, I visited Australia. It was a very successful visit. At that time, there was a problem in the island of Fiji, if you recollect. I'm talking of 1988. What had happened is that Fiji is an island in the South Pacific, which is in the jurisdiction of Australia. because Australia gives its supplies and food and all that sort of thing. It's an island, South Sea island. And in Fiji, as it luck what happened, a large number of Indians settled there beside the local population. So what happened there was they decided to become a democracy and they held an election. When they held the election, it was an Indian businessman who was elected as the prime minister. So he became the prime minister. Now, when he became the prime minister, the head of their army was a brigadier, Fijian by extraction. He said, I can't have an Indian being the prime minister of Fiji, it should be a Fijian. So he caught hold of the prime minister and shoved him in the jail. There's a bit hoo-ha about that. All the Western nations who normally shout from the housetops about democracy, etc., didn't say a word. They accepted. So I asked the Australian chief, I said, this is under your jurisdiction. You're the man who's supplying all this. You've got a whole division, quick reaction force in Brisbane, in the eastern coast of Australia. Why didn't you intervene for democracy, as we did in the Maldives, for instance? We just done the Maldives operation by. So he said, our government said nothing on the subject. I said, what do you think about it personally? He says, I haven't given it any thought. I said, in other words, as long as the democracy gets an Indian out of the chair, you're not bothered. He said, no, I just don't think about it. I said, do you advise the government at all? He said, no. I follow their orders in case they tell me to do something, we'll use the military, otherwise not. So I said, as army chief, you have to also advise the government, because politics is not always clean and straight. You can't have double standards for people. So you don't expect me to send the Indian army to Fiji and sort it out and bring democracy back to that island. We've done it in Maldives. But naturally, our government was involved. Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi was involved in the Maldives. So, have I told you about the Maldives operation? Now, I'm not recollecting whether I've spoken to you about this or not, but it's the first operation we conducted. Just to explain a few points about this operation. I think I'd been in the chair for only 3 months. This is about early November, 1988, when the Maldives government sent a lot of SOS to all the embassies in Colombo. Maldives is a set of islands, about 200 or 300 islands, south of the Lakshadweep, west of Colombo. And really, if you look at it from the India's point of view, when you want to take your ships into the Indian Ocean or into the Arabian Sea, let us say, from South India, you travel in various sea gaps to cross the Maldives in the south and the Lakshadweep in the north to go towards Aden or go towards South Africa, wherever you wish to go. So apparently, there was in Maldives is basically a Muslim population. So there was a president is Muhammad Makoum or whatever his name was. He was the president of Maldives. And what happened, about 200 terrorists from Sri Lanka arrived in the Maldives. That's the capital is Malé, on an island. 100 of them came as tourists and they sort of knocked around there. 100 more came in a old merchant vessel, docked at the harbor. And then with about 200 people, they played mayhem in Malé, the capital, which is in a separate island. And Abdul Qayyum ran away from his headquarters because his headquarters was captured by these guys. They only had a police. So these guys had captured the police headquarters. Everybody ran. And Abdul Qayyum went and hid in some house belonging to a minister for tourism. Now, the Minister for Tourism had a satellite radio set satellite communication, because he was in charge of tourism and large number of tourists come to Maldives. They land on the airfield, which was 2 nautical miles on another island away from Bali, the capital. So normally that had an airfield on it, and international flights used to land there. And then a whole lot of boats and things used to bring tourists from the airport island to the capital Maldives or to whatever island they had their accommodation at. And they used to go and enjoy their time. It's a very beautiful place. Many people go on tourism there. So the tourism minister got the satellite thing and went, help, help, SOS, this has happened. When they approached the British embassy in Colombo, the Malaysian embassy, the Pakistan embassy, the American embassy, everybody, nobody reacted. Till one of the Sri Lankan chaps, why don't you ask the Indian embassy? So they asked the Indian embassy, Indian High Commissioner in Colombo, help, help. He raised the point to Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister. So I think it was about the 3rd of November, if I'm not mistaken. I was going to the office at about 8:15 in the morning. And I got a call from a young officer, foreign service officer called Ronen Sen, who retired, by the way, as our ambassador in the United States. A fine young man from Doon School. He knew me and some of my staff, because my staff had a number of officers from Doon School. Every school has a net. Rang me up. He said, General, sir, there's a problem. I said, what's the problem? He says, Abdul Qayyum has run away from his office in Maldives, and there's about a number of 100 tourists, terrorists from northern Sri Lanka who have occupied Male, the capital, and he's asking for help. Can the military do something about it? So I said, certainly the military can do anything you like. So he said, would you like to discuss that with the Prime Minister? I said, certainly. You bring him to my operations room. What time would you like to bring him? He said, can I suggest about 11:30? I said, yeah. So I came to the office. My Vice Chief, General Rodericks, who had served under me when I was 1 Corps commander, he came rushing to the lift. As I was coming out of the lift, I said, what's the problem? He says, Cabinet Secretary has asked me to come and see him on a very urgent business about the Maldives. I said, well, don't worry, I know this case now. You come to my office. He sat down in my office, and I told him to warn our parachute brigade for immediate operational action on 2 hours' notice. So he went off to do that. I was very lucky, Nivedita. Luck is a very interesting point. Are you lucky or are you not lucky? If you are lucky, everything falls into place. If you're not lucky, things don't fall in. So the difference between success and failure is good luck and bad luck. As an aside, I must tell you, if you study the great captains of history, military captains, when Napoleon Bonaparte became the Emperor of France, and people used to suggest promotion of one of his generals to Field Marshal, Marshal of France. He had 18 marshals of France. He conquered the whole of Europe, if you recollect. For promotion to the rank of Field Marshal. Now, naturally, his staff and others have already checked that man, his education, his military capability, how well he's done or not done, and they found him fit for promotion. So they've asked the Emperor's permission to promote him to Marshal. Emperor asked only one question. Is he lucky? If he's lucky, tell me which battle he succeeded where it was found that he was lucky. If he's not lucky, no promotion. This is the Emperor Napoleon. So as I said, luck is an important. So why I was lucky was that the naval chief was away on tour abroad, and the Air Force chief was again away on tour somewhere abroad or in the country, I don't know. But both of them were absent. So I became the boss because I was the only military chief present in defense headquarters. Second point was that the naval vice chief an Admiral, Vice Admiral Hiranandani was a very good friend of mine. And so was the Air Force Vice Chief, Nirmal Suri. Why? Because Nirmal Suri is from RIMC like me, and we go every year to RIMC, very good friends. He was the Vice Chief of the Air Force. Admiral, Vice Admiral Hiranandani, Gunu his name, when he was Rear Admiral, rank of Major General, and I was Major General, we were all together in what is known as the JPC. The JP is a Major General's Army, Navy, Air Force committee. It's a joint committee for Joint Planning Committee, JPC, where we decide various problems of India where Army, Navy, Air Force would be involved. And then having written a paper on the subject, after consensus, we would raise it to the Chief of Staff Committee for the three chiefs to say yes or no or amend. See, we did a year together in that JPC and found we were very great friends. So I had these two friends of mine. I just rang them up and please come to my office. There's a problem. And they both came rushing to my office. And I said, this has happened in Maldives. You've got to do something about it. The Prime Minister is coming at 11:30. We have to plan right now. So I asked the Air Force chap, General Suri, I said, do you have maps of the Maldives? Because I asked my military operations director, I said, some maps of the Maldives Island? He said, sorry, we have no maps of the Maldives Island. I said, that's very interesting. Then I asked Gulu, the Navy Vice Chief. He said, no, I don't have any maps, but I'll go and see if there are naval charts available. You know what a naval chart? Naval chart is the various channels through which Navy ships can move around in the ocean. There are a large number of islands in the ocean. So there's a 10-degree channel or a 15-degree channel. So for instance, between the southern Lakshadweep Island and the northern Maldives Islands, there's a 15-degree channel, 15 degrees on the compass. That much ocean where the channel, the ships can pass. Now, depending on the draught of the ship, that means how low does it sink in the water. It shouldn't get grounded when there's not much water there, you see. So the naval charts are very carefully worked out to see, and they're international, where ships can go, where submarines can go, and where they cannot. She brought these naval charts, and that was the only set of maps we could get, because there was no other. Now the land mass is only shown as a blob, no physical features, no beaches, no houses, nothing shown, just a yellow blob. It